Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Docker himself, William Henry. Give a big round of applause.
Hi everyone, I'm William Henry. I'm not Mr. Docker, although okay, so I'm a senior consulting software engineer. I work with the Cloud Product Strategy Group. And today I'm just going to talk a little bit about what's been happening here at Red Hat for particularly over the last year, as we're making a huge sort of transition to cloud technology. You know, many of you on your travels every day, just like me trying to get here to Asia Pac, your journey starts when you try to book your flight. You get online. For me, I even booked a flight from here down to Sydney with Emirates. And Emirates has a complete Red Hat technology stack, including middleware technology, powering many of its critical systems, including the online ticketing system. And organizations too, like airlines like British Airways, are also using Rev to virtualize thousands of environments. So on the day I'm leaving, or whatever, or actually before I was even leaving, I'm always checking the news on my smart TV, which is powered by Linux. And of course, I see that there's martial law and then a coup in Magma, so I had to do a lot of change in my plans. So I'm back onto the Emirates website trying to figure out how to fix that. But again, most of the smart TVs today that we're looking at include are all powered by Linux. And of course, too, my Nexus tablet, when I'm making my changes to my Delta flights as well, I'm using that on my Android-based tablet. Of course, when I'm using my phone to make any changes, when I'm calling, I'm using technologies like Ericsson or Nokia or Alcatel, and all of these are extensively Linux open source software powered devices. And even when in Asia Pac here, we have Telstra uses Red Hat's OpenStack for a lot of their cloud services. Oh, you want me to sit down? Squeeze. I need to move the camera. Yay. I get to sit. I guess they realize I'm just an old guy. And of course, when I'm making all these different changes and all these calls are getting linked from different providers as many of us travel across the globe, companies like Amdocs and others who use open source technology are doing a lot of the billing for this. When I'm on my way to the airport, you know, we use our navigation systems, which many of them are using open source. In fact, some of them are using JBoss and Fuse. But I also like to use the Waze application recently. I got used to playing with it to find out what traffic and what other obstructions could be coming up on my road that could delay me. And Waze is another application that's open source. This picture is showing a toll collection system, this one basically in Germany, but many of the sensors that are around, like toll systems, are powered by open source technology. And in fact, the toll system in Germany uses Fuse messaging technology to ensure all the tolls get collected correctly. On the way to the airport then, I might fill up with gas, and as we know, a lot of the petroleum companies are using open source technology to do a lot of their research, a lot of their drilling exploration research, and for example, grid technology and high performance computing platforms to figure out where the best place to drill is. in terms of where the oil is, but also to optimize how they're going to get that oil out of the ground so that they can safely get it to your vehicles. When I arrive at the airport, most of the information systems are using Linux to provide the information about incoming flights, etc. So then when I board the plane and I start checking out what movies I might want to watch, often some of those devices are running Linux, but also I might decide, oh, there's a DreamWorks animation movie I want to watch that has been rendered and often completely designed and rendered on Linux machines out there in Glendale or Redwood City. And not only that, but the grid technology to make sure that all of the jobs that make up all those renders are scheduled on and off their large Red Hat Enterprise Linux grids. Before taking off, the pilot might check the weather forecast, etc. And a lot of that information comes from places like UK Met Office and other weather services that use Linux and open source software. And finally, when we take off and we're in the air traffic control agents that help guide the plane. Many of those, particularly, for example, in Europe, are using Linux and other open source software. Then I get to my hotel, and when I arrive, I check in. Again, the desk systems, the check-in systems that I'm using at the hotels, often they're using open source. For example, the NH hotels in Spain have their front desk systems are open source. Also, when I get to the room, I might decide I need to do a few things. First of all, I might decide to check my credit card system using some sort of mobile app on my phone. Many of these systems are using, from different banks around the world, are using open source stacks for their systems. I might decide I need to do some trades back home in the US while I'm here. Again, those trading systems, places like New York Stock Exchange, Japan Stock Exchange, Hong Kong Stock Exchange, many of those are using open source software. If you're like me and you don't like roaming charges when you're over here often, I will sometimes leave my phone in airplane mode and just use a SIP service or something like Google Hangout for my tablet or my mobile smartphone. And again, many of these technologies are using open source on the covers. And if anybody needs to ship me something and get it to my hotel or here, they will use services like DHL or FedEx or UPS. And these services too are large users of open source. So almost everything that we're doing today, as we can see, is driven very much from open source. It's touching our lives like never before. It's not just niche companies on Wall Street or other places that are using open source software, but it's everywhere, and much of that has been driven by huge amount of innovation. When you look at companies in the Web 2.0 space running millions of servers, most of those servers are Linux, or all of those servers are Linux, and without Linux and open source, many of these companies would not even exist, and the cloud wouldn't exist without Linux and open source software. Looking at companies like this, in some ways you can see they weren't held back by a lot of traditional IT infrastructure, and they straight away innovated on newer technologies using open source, and that's where they got not just it wouldn't exist, but they wouldn't exist at the scale of the growth that they achieved without open source technology. Okay, so we're in the midst of the biggest IT transformation in a long time, and I know that sounds like, oh yeah, we hear this all the time, but really it is changing like never before. Well, there's been a few different interruptions. We'll talk about those on the next slide, but when we see how rapid the innovation has been used to solve real-world problems and how much that is based on open source technologies, and all of you guys out there are very critical participants in this process, whether you're engineers, whether you're solutions architects or consultants or partners, you're all part of what we're trying to do and what organizations are trying to do to move and be innovative and using open source software. So over the last 3 decades, we've moved from, obviously from mainframe to proprietary Unix stacks to client servers. Then things like Linux came along and open source came along. And we've moved that not into a commodity play. And also then we had the internet come along, and that changed things dramatically. Because now we are exposing a lot of our back-end business right out into customers. That was a major, major change for organizations and forced them to do a lot of different things and bring in different processes. But also, smartphones forced applications into more cloud-like infrastructures. So this transformation in the cloud would not have been possible without Linux and open source software. And, the proof point of that is essentially that, that almost every major infrastructure initiative that's out there right now, when you look at it, is based on open source projects. And this is the change we're seeing. It's not just that open source is in small niche play. It's almost every single thing that's happening out there is in open source. And many of you guys are seeing that now as you go out to your customers, how rapid the change is and the new projects that you're hearing names of every single day. Okay, so how do we overcome this, or what's happening? Well, what we're seeing is people have physical, there are applications on their physical infrastructure. They have traditional virtual. I know that sounds strange, but they'll have traditional virtual infrastructure. Then, of course, people are moving to public cloud and out into, and then bringing some applications back in on the private cloud, or taking the virtualization to a level which becomes private cloud. And there's, what we're seeing is, and we're going to get into this in a little bit more depth, is there's a business demand for innovation, right? So the business is saying, this sounds, it sounds like, yes, this has always been the case, but never before have we seen it at this level, where the business demand for innovation is so huge, while the capability of the back-end systems on the traditional infrastructure is holding people back. And the IT need to manage all of this transformation as one, having to do everything they do today, and in many cases simply brokering services from providers and bringing it together into a seamless, secure environment. And these are huge demands put on IT, and you guys are seeing it. So while innovation brings new technologies to the enterprise, we're seeing that these guys are, who are trying to implement it are just trying to keep up. I mean, I have a question for you. Are you guys struggling to keep up? Can you keep up? I've been at Red Hat for over 6 years. Everyone here is pretty is very smart. I find it hard to keep up. It seems like there are new projects every week that are coming out that are demanding our attention, and they're coming from the customers who are saying, hey, have you heard of this new technology? So if we're finding it hard to keep up, the reality is that the IT organizations within our customers they just can't keep up with the amount of innovation that's out there. So what are the analysts saying about this? Well, we've been delivering open source solutions for a long time, and cloud, as we see, is the future of not just for us, but for many organizations that we work with. So let's have a look at what the analysts are saying about this. The analysts are saying that much of the cost is buried in complex, traditional legacy applications and platforms, right? And they're saying it's anywhere between 70 or 80%, whereas the budgets for these organizations is essentially flat. Well, that doesn't leave us an awful lot of dollars left over for our innovation, right? So how do we help our organizations deal with it, moving, or if you like, filling that gap? Let's have another look at a slide here. This slide is a little bit complex, but I want to try to keep the point of it simple. CIOs were given a long list of different priorities, technology priorities that they were trying to solve, or that they would like to focus on over the next year or so for 2014. And they were allowed to choose 3. And of course, everybody's going to choose different priorities. And so here's a sort of ranking of the top 12 that came out of those CIO rankings. As you can see, things like business intelligence, mobility, infrastructure, and the data center are the top 3 and very important. But Gartner had a look at these and broke it up into 2 different areas. Essentially, one area is renovating the core. That's things like I want to change my infrastructure and the data center, or I want to do something, renovate my networking and voice and data communications, or I need to do something with my existing security, etc. So they want to renovate the core, while at the same time they want to exploit a lot of the new. So, they want to do things around, we want to bring our application to be mobile. We want newer applications. We want to do more business analytics, for example. Okay, so 2 different tracks, renovating the core and essentially exploiting the new. So how do we bridge this? Remember the diagram I showed earlier where we had that upward trend on the innovation demand, and then we have the sinking, if you like, costs on the maintenance side. And both of those essentially are renovating the old, which is where all that maintenance cost has been, just keeping the lights on, but at the same time, those business demands are driving upwards. So open source and standards accelerate this the innovation. We know this. We've already been doing this around Linux for 10 years or so. But open source is more than seeing the source code. As we know, it's about the development process. We're seeing that more and more. It talks about bringing in interoperability and open standards where we can share resources and have portable services. And all of this is possible because it's built on open source development process. And all major vendors and industry are now participating in open source. And you can see this by just looking at something like GitHub. The amount of projects up there, people are sharing things up there, how it's developing processes in their organization that's more agile, more open. So this is the reason that open source is driving this big technology shift that's happening today. So not just we have Linux, cloud, big data, mobility, cloud applications. They're all being innovated as open source projects. And all major innovations by the leading cloud companies are based on open source. There's no real significant innovation among the proprietary vendors. So you have these hundreds of thousands of projects out there, and as you guys know very well from dealing with your customers or looking at the industry in general, you're seeing new projects and new innovations happening every day. So, open innovation is now driving the future of IT. So, it has been just 11 years after the first commercial open source product and company, RHEL and Red Hat, brought the true open source development products to the enterprise. And Red Hat has been transforming the company over the last 12 months based on what we've done in those first 11 years. And you've seen a lot of changes at Red Hat over the last 12 months with things, the amount of investment in things like OpenStack, technologies like Docker, what we're doing around Project Atomic, our acquisition of Inktank and Ceph. Again, all of this is based on open source development and all with the support of our customers and, most importantly, our partners. Okay, so we've done this before. We're really good at it. Linux is becoming more mainstream and being deployed by many companies in places like Wall Street. And then we continue the hardening of Linux for the enterprise, and we started building out our stack beyond that. Back in 2006, we acquired JBoss, and moving just from the just RHEL to offering more of a middleware portfolio. We've done other things around messaging. Added things like Fuse and et cetera, et cetera. However, the development is the same as 12 years ago in many ways in the open source community and the foundation for the production of the technologies and the hardening of the technologies. So now what does it look like? Well, if you look at it today, the community model remains key. As we bring the next generation cloud platforms to the market, we are extending our technology model to bring the most consistent paths and infrastructure as a service platforms to the enterprise based on the same consistent building blocks we've done before. Okay, so we built in the same open source community, enterprise class methodology for everything from RHEL all the way up. And we know how to do this. No one, as you guys know, is more committed to open source software as Red Hat. Whether that is acquiring existing open source, for example, JBoss or Fuse, are good examples, or whether it was acquiring proprietary technology and then taking that and open source and things like ManageIQ and Overt, are the way we're willing to admit some directions were wrong and make changes and then invest heavily in things like OpenStack and the way we're now investing in things like Docker for OpenShift and also Ceph with our investment in Inktank. Again, all of this we do in the open and as often and as fast as we can. If something is proprietary and we like it, we will bring it out into the open and drive it into an open source community. Okay. So for many years, I'm looking at the time, good. For many years, the technology stacks have been built and delivered as custom-built solutions by individual vendors. And this may seem strange to some of you young people out there, but for many of us old folks, we're very familiar with this idea. Certainly, organizations may have control over their own customizations if they have that in-house. But for many of the parts along the way on their stacks, those parts have basically been closed by the individual vendors. And the customers had no, or at least it was very difficult to influence features and roadmaps due to the lack of the open source community process. And innovation was very much tied to a single stack vendor. So if you were invested in some particular stack, for example, Microsoft or whatever, you were basically on their roadmap, and they told you when certain features were coming down the pipe. A lot of the time, too, there was no or very little or few open API interfaces. Standard boards and groups that mean well and do well were often very slow, and all things like web services, for example, I was involved in that. They were often very slow and driven by very exclusive clubs and dominated by very, very large vendors, which were influencing the way it came, the way it was delivered in the end to customers. So the customer has very little influence on the actual product or the roadmap or features, even though they could request them, etc. But they may be told, you know what, that's coming next year, or you're the only customer who's asking for that, etc. Whereas now, open innovation is driving all that. Customers can go straight upstream, contribute some code if they want, and see that code trickle down, or get a community of other customers who are also interested in a feature and drive it that way. We see that particularly in things like OpenStack, for example. Now, with an open source based model, as I said, we're seeing the ability to participate and influence and provide direct feedback into the community, and ultimately product features and roadmap. And you can see this with Fedora. You can see it, and many of you have seen this very, very prominently now in things like OpenStack, and even in things like ManageIQ, etc. So the open source software model, it also enables much more early testing and evaluation of the capabilities and ideas. So you're not waiting for the product to be delivered. You can be testing and looking at various features right along into the development process, right? And open standards are created via the open source process in the community, and we can see that too with technology like OpenStack as an example. And we see that every major industry player is participating, but still giving customer choices over individual capabilities. So again, in OpenStack, people can decide on what storage they're using, or what compute they're going to deploy on, or what networking they require. So this feedback loop from product back into innovation is almost instantaneous, whereas before there would be a huge lag, and you may or may not see them at all. So innovation then is a path forward, and how though can our customers take advantage of the accelerated innovation? How do the customers build out an IT architecture based on the capabilities delivered today by open source models? So RHEL has been the platform for deployments, whether that's bare metal or virtualization or in the cloud infrastructure. It enables customers to deploy an enterprise compute platform anywhere, anytime. Red Hat has architected standard operating environments and process for customers to enable efficient deployments of RHEL in their infrastructure. RHEL also is the foundation for all of the technologies to deliver on an open hybrid cloud infrastructure. We'll talk about that in a moment. It delivers capabilities for service level agreements and quality of service and security, for example, with things like C groups and containers and SE Linux. Red Hat also provides the largest portfolio of certified partner solutions, both hardware and software. Okay, so here's that diagram before where we have the business demand for innovation going up, and as we know, there's very little dollars left for that. Whereas the big cost is our capability model of our keep the lights on traditional infrastructure. So we want to bridge that gap with both our infrastructure as a service offering, our platform as a service, and our XPaaS. So In terms of our IT efficiency, the infrastructure as a service is focused on making it much more efficient by making it scalable, by making it very elastic, and by introducing capabilities such as self-service for end users. So we obviously have a variety of offerings there in the infrastructure as a service, both when it comes to RHEL and OpenStack on top of RHEL, and Rev and our storage offering, and also what we do with satellite. However, it's not enough to just make IT more efficient. We need also to start to make your developers more productive. And so developers need rapid tool environments and infrastructure to do that. And is that an airplane? It's an airplane. It's an airplane going overhead. It's probably even open source software, just so you know. Anyway, for our developers, then we obviously have the JBoss offering, which includes great technologies like Fuse, etc. as well. But we also have the OpenShift product, which allows our developers to get their applications immediately out there for into the production environment. We also have so that's our platform as a service, but it's not just enough to be able to have efficient infrastructure and productive developers. You also got to be able to connect those, and this is very important, connect those to the back-end applications, those complex applications we were talking about earlier on the older platforms, that traditional stuff, the 80% stuff. We have to be able to bridge between our platform as a service and reach back into those older business processes and bring that information, that data out to the to our mobile apps or our cloud-based applications. And so we connect those back using our XPath and things like our VPN, etc. Okay. So that's how those are the sort of products in a broad sense that we use to bridge this gap. What's important is that it's open and it's hybrid. And the reason for that is it has to be hybrid because you need to be able to move towards an architecture that's not just a brand new cloud like we have today by spinning up our OpenStack, but one that also encompasses all the rest of those workloads that we were talking about, that reaches back into our physical systems or virtualized environments that are already existing today. Also, it's got to be open so that you can have interoperability and not locked into a single vendor, but rather you want to be able to bring the benefits of cloud pervasively across everything that you're doing. So that means that for the new startups, it's just great. They can just grab new stuff and innovate. But for many of our customers today that have these physical based systems or these what they thought was innovative at one time virtual systems, all of those now are things that feel like they're being locked away. But with an open hybrid cloud model, they're able to take those and connect those with the innovative apps that they've been deploying. So all the way up and down the stack, we provide the ability to provide an open hybrid cloud. We've seen that from RHEL all the way up to our XPath offerings. We not only build your next generation cloud infrastructure on an open platform, but we extend those capabilities back into your existing infrastructure across a diversity of different platforms. Furthermore, as we have done for many of our customers, Red Hat can provide consulting and training services. We also have a fantastic partner ecosystem that can engage with our customers so that you guys can successfully bring cloud solutions. solutions. 。 So, yeah. So as you can see, we've been very busy for 10 years. However, in many ways and in many respects, what we've been able to do in the last year in driving the next-gen technology for the industry is a culmination of what we've learned in the last 10 years. So what we did in the last 10 years wasn't just about building open source and providing open source, but it's the learning process of the development process and how to bring that to customers so that they can be innovative, how to create communities, how to draw people into those communities, how to jump into popular communities and bring those into our portfolio. That's what we've been very good at, and we're going to continue to be to do that. So we have huge plans to build on the 10 years. And so the journey we start today with these new platforms is really just the beginning. I mean, in the last year, you've seen so many new things come in to Red Hat. It may seem like it's hard to catch up, and it has been for many of us. But the great news is that all of these have a particular place in what we're trying to achieve between the infrastructure as a service, the platform as a service, and the XPaaS. And we're very, very good at that. So we can't get there on our own. Our partner ecosystem has never been so important. And open source also now gives customers a choice early on in the technology development cycle. And you guys are seeing this already, where your customers are actively involved in open source projects like never before, and have more demands on you guys to get this stuff. So, and your job as well, whether you're SAs or consultants, is our partners, is to make sure that our engineering organizations are hearing and getting that feedback from the customers. So, the more from me later on today and tomorrow. I will be doing the sessions specifically on the Project Atomic and on Docker, and also on Gear D. So I'll be doing a lot of container work. If you guys are interested in checking in on that, I look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much. Canned applause there.
All right, let me jump in here. Let's see. William, thanks so much for this, and thank you what he's going to do this afternoon is totally awesome. It's going to be really cool. Next is Bruno George, the head of engineering, and he has all this stuff. I don't know, what is it? Bruno, what do you got?
IoT devices, I'll keep it for...
He has IoT devices. Look at it. Look at it. Isn't that awesome? And it all runs on middleware, doesn't it?
Of course.
All right, there you go. All right, give us 2 minutes to set up here, and we'll be back.